Tell me a little bit about Baseline Group New York and what you do and what you've got going on.
Sure. Okay. So Baseline Group New York, we are a 23-year-old branding and graphic communications firm. So basically, we work with clients of all sizes. We work with large or small businesses up to Fortune 100 companies, and we are a part of their marketing team. So we come up with creative ideas for them to market their products or services. Could be digital ads, could be digital websites, could be printed brochures, could be advertisements, digital or printed. So it's really whatever kind of materials you need to market your products or services. We have a large footprint working with clients in the financial services industry. So on the large side, we've served clients such as Citi, Goldman Sachs, Asset Management, Deutsche Bank, HSBC, and hedge funds, private equity firms. And then on the smaller side, we work with a lot of women and minority-owned businesses to make sure that their brands are in order and that they're putting their very best foot forward when they approach a prospect. So, wherever you are in your marketing efforts, we're happy to step in and consult with you and just kind of see where you are, what you maybe could be doing better or differently, and just make sure that whatever we do elevates your brand and get you out there with an authentic message.
We decided to do this because a lot of people are confused about what to do and what's going on next, and they don't know what to do. So we thought we'd do something called Business Unusual and talk about what to do when you're doing business unusually. And Darcy, I wanted to talk to you because you actually have a lot of experience with this. This isn't your first crisis.
Right. So my company, Baseline Group New York, is headquartered in Manhattan. And so we've experienced a couple of major interruptions in business. The first being 9/11, which was pretty traumatic and a very big disruption to business as usual in New York. And the second being Hurricane Sandy, which was again pretty disastrous for half of the island. Unfortunately, the half that my business is in, which was the downtown half. So we kind of learned the hard way. And what I hope will happen through this conversation is that we can share some things we learned the hard way so you guys can all do it the easy way, which is to prepare for these things before they're just sprung upon you,
Yeah. So before we do that, what are some of the things that make this a little different than like 9/11 or Sandy or like a natural disaster what's the difference?
Well, I think the biggest difference is with both of the other incidents, we knew there was going to be a pretty quickly an end to the disruption of business. So with Sandy, it was about a week that we were not allowed in our office, and then we could be back together in an office setting and have client meetings and try to conduct business personally. And the same with 9/11. I think we were right in the zone there. So our office was closed for a couple weeks. And then, even though life didn't really get back to normal, we were allowed to go back to the office. We could hold business meetings at different locations. And so I think what's different here is that the personal element of doing business together, which is how we are used to working, business meetings, social gatherings, conferences, and even just being in the same room with your team is being disrupted. And what we don't know is for how long in this particular instance. So I think we're just at the beginning of it, and we don't really know if it's going to get worse or a lot worse or for how long it'll be that way. And because this is a contagious disease, being in person and in rooms with people and in conferences is being disrupted for the unforeseeable future. So that's really different from what we experienced previously.
Yeah, I remember that. It's nowhere near on the level of 9/11, but I remember when the lights went out, when the power went out in 2003, because of a generator in New Jersey. And, especially in New York, but I think that it's like your whole instinct is to come together, actually.
Right.
I was telling my husband about it, and he's like, that sounds horrifying. I was like, New York's a great place to be in a crisis because people are used to that proximity and they know when they have to come together. And I think, I moved to New York shortly after 9/11, and that was certainly true. It was like, we're like, you're in it together, and here it is. It's like the solution is quarantining, which is, physically and emotionally isolating. So it is different.
It's very different. And me, for me, I'm finding that to be the hardest part. So we'll talk about what infrastructure to put in place to make it possible to do business, but it's very, very hard when you're a social person and you're a salesperson and you, especially as a business owner, you are the face of your business. You're used to reaching out and shaking hands and having meetings. And when things go wrong, you're used to huddling with your team and kind of figuring it out and, having that personal contact with clients. So it's really, that is a different thing. It's going to be a learning curve to kind of adjust the mental aspect of doing business to having that same feeling occur over a computer screen or, at a virtual event or however things play out with some of these larger events that are being canceled.
Yeah. So tell me about some of the infrastructure, because you were saying you have a plan in place after these previous things. So what are some things that you did put in place that you learned?
So the first thing, which I would hope most people are using now, is the cloud. So the cloud exists and everybody should have all of their projects and workflow backed up on a server. Like it could be a physical server somewhere, which is fine. But now that we have the cloud, that's a good place to double back up your server. And both of those things should not be in a closet in your office, because the hard way to learn that is when your server's in a closet in your office and all of a sudden there's flooding and there's short circuiting and things shut off abruptly. In our case, we're unable to retrieve a percentage of projects that were on our main server. And that was a real problem because we had to rebuild all those files and, even figure out what was lost and what was still there. So I think lesson number one we learned was make sure everything that you need, all of your files, are backed up somewhere safe and secure. And also nowadays, backing them up in the cloud as a secondary backup is a good thing to do. So once you have everything there, the next step is networking yourself and your team so that you can pull all those files down from a remote location. So even if we had been backed up properly after 9/11, we didn't have remote access to our server. So it wouldn't have helped us. I mean, we wouldn't have lost data, but we wouldn't have been able to work. So the second step is making sure that everyone on your team can connect to that main server to pull the files they need down to work on. And then also equally important is making sure they get put back so that no file is residing on someone's laptop that's sitting at home, because that's not going to help everybody else. So that was kind of one thing. And then it's making sure just really simple things. Like I did as an owner, I didn't have everybody's home phone number because it was in a folder called everybody's home phone number at work on my desktop. So when 9/11 happened, I didn't even know. I had to look all of my people up old school and hope that they were listed because I didn't have their home phone numbers with me at home. So it's just every aspect of communicating with your team and the workflow has to be thought about, and it all has to become remote so that you can function and communicate when you're not allowed to go into a bricks and mortar building.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges you experience with that too? Because it's not as simple as just saying, okay, we're all working from home, put on your slippers and get at a computer.
Well, the more people you have, the harder that equation gets because, some people have kids, they have dogs, they have, busy lifestyles, and they will find when they start working from home that you have to educate yourself about what that means. So it doesn't mean that it's an opportunity to do laundry, go shopping, run errands, and try to fit work in between that, even though there's that big temptation to do that. It means, for me, I get up every morning, whether I'm working from home or not, and if it's a business day, I get dressed, at least in respectable clothing, take my shower like usual, keep my routine. If I want personal time, I'll go for a walk the dogs, do my laundry before 9. And then from 9 o'clock till say 11:30 or 12, I'm doing work. And then if I have that laundry to do or that whatever, I do it for lunch. That's my lunch break. And then I'm back working again until 5. And, things happen when you're at home that might not happen in the office and you may get distracted. But the goal is to instill a sense of, hey, we really are at work even though we're at home, and kind of try to teach your employees how to work that way, because it's very disruptive in the beginning until you do it. And you don't want people wasting time. So, you have timesheets, you can have people track their time, you can set up project goals, whatever it is that you have to do to try to make it feel like a work day. And then just teaching people to share digitally as they go along. Like, oh, we're going to have a meeting on this project. Normally we'd go in the conference room and pull some stuff in there and have a meeting and come back. But there's no conference room. So you might have to set up a Zoom call, or you might have to put a bunch of things in Dropbox and share them. It's just using all these beautiful digital tools that are out there to, as closely as you can, replicate what a day would look like in the office.
Yeah, I know. I talk about that, being camera ready. When you like, even though I work most of my days from home, that is business as usual for me. But still, it's like these are my meetings. They're almost all via Zoom. And so being ready to be on camera. I think part of that too is like not worrying so much about, just getting used to turning the camera on. Because as you mentioned, there is that lack of connection, and the seeing people really does help. It's different than just, talking to somebody on the phone. So I try to do it as much as I can, but it was an adjustment for me. You're looking at yourself like, is that what I really look like? And it's like, newsflash, it's what you look like. Yeah. People know what you look like. They see you, so I don't know why it just feels different when it's on camera.
Well, because we don't look at ourselves. And when we're like now, when I'm talking to you, I'm looking at my face the whole time. Normally you'd be the one privileged with looking at me, right? Myself, and I'm thinking, So you start to really, there is a lot to it. And when I started working from home, which I do frequently because I have a 4-hour commute, 2 hours each way. So I started trying to work from home at least 1 or 2 days a week to get the time back. I mean, I can actually start working the minute I get up, and I can work as late as I want. And there's not that big interruption to commute. So I started doing it. And in the beginning, I wouldn't get dressed, right? I would wear comfy clothes all day. And I thought that was just the coolest thing until I had a client surprise me with a conference call. Oh, can you get on the phone in 10 minutes? And I was sitting there in sweatpants with my hair all a mess. And it wasn't easy to pull that together in 10 minutes. So the point that you just made is a good one. You have to be camera ready. I mean, you don't have to be dressed to the nines every day, but you have to be prepared so that if somebody wants to speak with you and they want to see you, you're seeable. Like,
right.
Without, makeup and a whole entourage, which sadly I don't have. You have to
Not yet.
Not yet. But yeah, I mean, that's another one of those things. And so there's a lot to think about in moving to a remote work day, but it's doable. We're fully remote now, and everybody on my team has been doing it long enough that it's pretty seamless for the most part. And it's a nice thing to be able to have if someone's sick, or if they're not really sick, but they don't feel like they can come in, they can still work and be a part of a meeting via a Zoom call. There's just a lot of good tools out there to make it possible.
So it's something you started out of necessity, but then you saw a lot of benefits to it and you kept doing it.
I did. And, the thing to think about is owners and managers and people in senior level positions have a lot of flexibility usually. And many of them do work remotely. Many of them travel. But the employees oftentimes are at a desk all day. And, I'm not saying everybody should institute this, but for me, when I give my employees flexibility and I say to them, hey, it's summer, everybody gets a work from home day. So, half of you can take Fridays, half of you can take Mondays and work from home. And that way, if they're going to the beach or whatever they're going to do for the weekend, they're home. So they can like clock out and leave. And they don't have that whole like getting their stuff packed up, they're home and they can just go. And it makes a big difference in morale when you give your employees a little bit of leeway around scheduling. And it's just healthier for them too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things we started talking about too, was that we're going to see a lot of lasting impacts of this. Like maybe people will keep washing their hands.
One can only hope.
Right. But yeah, I mean, what are some of the lasting impacts? Because that's, like you said, 9/11, certainly since 2001, the technology is a lot better than it was then. So it makes it possible. What are some of the other lasting impacts that you think that this crisis could have?
Well, we were talking about that a little bit. And one of the things I think, just being a New Yorker and having nothing to do with my personal workflow, is that the infrastructure is dirty. The subways, the turnstiles, the elevators, like everything always looks dirty. And your instinct, even on a good day, is not to touch anything because everything looks just dirty. And now, with this whole big coronavirus scare, people are cleaning everything a lot more frequently. And it's really pleasant to get in an elevator and not look at it and think, oof, when's the last time someone scrubbed the walls down? Or to swipe your card in a turnstile at the subway and not be completely disgusted by what the turnstile looks like. So I'm hoping that one of the lasting impacts will be that people don't allow buildings and public spaces to go back to that disgusting kind of dirty way. I mean, there's so many of us, and we should always be healthy. And in my opinion, there's no reason that shouldn't just stay that way. I mean, maybe not every 15 minutes, because that would be expensive to clean that often, but more than the status quo, let's just say.
Yeah, I remember you said, who even knew the MTA had disinfectant?
Right.
Like, they've had disinfectant this whole time. Where's it been?
I mean, that's how you feel sometimes. And I don't know if all big cities are as bad as New York. New York is, it has a kind of a bad reputation with good reason. I mean, granted, there's just a tremendous amount of traffic that travels through these public spaces and uses the transportation, but there's got to be a halfway point that's better than where we were before. Because now I look around and everything's so clean and I just think, wow, this is so civilized and nice. Can't we keep it this way when this is all over? Can we try? So there's that. And I think the other big thing people might start to realize is that working from home or remotely is a good thing. And not to say people should just go, foreclosing on their leases and running home, but I think it's a nice balance and it's a really nice perk to offer your employees. And you have to establish the trust first and the workflow and the relationship with the employee. But it's a big perk to give people a little bit of flexibility, and working from home is completely possible. So if you can get there to where it really is, every aspect of it is possible, it's awesome, because nothing can really stand in your way of doing business.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about that I hope it stays in terms of keeping people healthy is not going in when you're sick.
Ah.
And a lot of people have to, right? Like, they'll lose their jobs if they don't.
Right.
You and I don't have that problem, but I think that's one of the reasons it's able to spread so fast is because people are like feel that they're forced to go into work.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a huge sacrifice. And I think that's something that we need to reconsider too. Like, why don't people just stay home if they're sick?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. There's always people that are going to take advantage of a situation like that, but there are ways to kind of make sure they're telling the truth. There are ways to make sure they're not just, sitting on a beach somewhere. But agreed. I mean, if people had a little more leeway with the sick days, and that goes back to the working from home. Like, if you make your establishment or your office or your environment completely remote, there's no reason a sick day has to interfere with work either, unless the person is really, really sick. Like, if you have the flu, you're not going to work. If
Yeah.
you have a bad virus, you're not going to work, or a stomach bug. But sometimes it's just a cold, but it is contagious. And
Yeah.
once somebody sick comes into the office, they're spreading it around, and then everybody in the office is sick, and then you have all these rolling waves of sick days, right? If that person could feel comfortable just staying home and they could work from home, and were capable of working from home because of the infrastructure, but also able to work from home because you said, okay, if you're sick, my policy is this, you stay home, but you're still working unless you're really sick, then they wouldn't feel like they had to schlep themselves in and, in essence, of possibly infect everyone in the office.
Yeah.
So, a lot of benefits to that.
Yeah. And in my experience, as an employee, the person that's going to abuse their sick days, if there's, you know what I mean? If they have unlimited sick days, they're going to abuse something else.
Right.
You're going to know, like, the sick days aren't the issue.
Right.
And they're not, having 5 sick days as opposed to 10 or whatever isn't going to keep them in line.
Right. You know your people. And that comes down to, if our entire workflow moves to a more remote way of being, then when you select employees, you have to think about that. Because when people are in an office with you, you have direct interaction with them all the time, and you're very aware of what they're doing every minute of the day. You can literally walk around and see what everybody's up to and check in with people, and have status updates and little conference things in the conference room to get project updates. So you can manage a team of people, literally manage them because they're there. Now, when you move to a remote workday, your people are wherever they are. You're not going to be able to see what they're doing. And so I think it might even have a lasting impact on hiring, the types of people you hire, and or your work handbook, what you're willing to put up with and what you're not, like the rules that you create for your employees and what's status quo and what's not. Because all of that has to be in writing and described when someone's applying for a job. And if you're going to move to a more remote way of doing business, the qualities of integrity and, people who are going to really take the job seriously. And when we say remote, it doesn't mean you're not working. Like, those are the kinds of people you're going to want to hire.
Yeah.
So it might even have impact on who you choose for your team.
Yeah, right. Like, and your management style. Like, if you find, oh, I have to be on top of everybody to get anything done.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you can rearrange.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it might put an end to the micromanaging folks, because if you can't see someone and they're not in your office, you can't really effectively micromanage them, nor would you want to have to. So maybe it would help managers and owners um, kind of empower their people to take the power and do their job and not be so micromanaged, and like let them make the mistakes to learn how to do the job, and then empower them to do it and let them be kind of autonomous within the team, so that whatever you task them to do, you're believing that they can do it, you're empowering them to do it, and giving them the freedom to build their ideal job description, which sometimes makes people really innovative and really take their job more seriously because they want to build whatever it is they want to build for themselves.
yeah, yeah. So what's the one thing that you're doing to protect yourself or your employees, your business right now?
Well, we have a couple of things. I mean, we have talked about no travel. I mean, unless it was really critical, we're really asking our employees not to travel, especially to particularly infected areas. We're not going to conferences anymore as of last week, or any places where there are large crowds. We may be working remotely. We'll have to see how bad it gets, and just not going into the city and commuting on public transportation. Right now, I'm leaving it to everybody to decide what they're comfortable with, and I'm not mandating anything. But if our particular area of Manhattan becomes really infected, then I would suggest, why are you going to put yourselves through that? You should just work from home, which is possible. And then, of course, the hand washing, which is like the number one thing.
Yeah.
When you get into work, the first thing you do is get that hot water on and wash those hands, because who knows what you touched on a subway or bus. Don't touch your face. I mean, hand sanitizer, I'm not 100% sure I even believe that works. I think the soap and water is the best thing, and the longevity, like how long you wash those hands for to get all the stuff off of them. And, just being compassionate and caring about the elderly folks around you. Like, if you are putting yourself in a situation where you might be sick and there are elderly people around, think, because you could literally be contributing to their death by subjecting them to what you think might be a common cold, but you're not sure. Like, if you feel bad, stay home. Don't go anywhere, especially not anywhere where there are people who are elderly. But you'll never know on a subway who you compromise. Like, you're not going to know. There's so many people. So I think it's just being sensible. If you don't feel good, stay home. If you have a fever, stay home. Just trying to be respectful, and building our remote model so that it feels completely seamless to work from home.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the hardest thing. Washing hands is good because I have two kids in daycare, and they've always been religious about washing hands, right? And you do it for 20 seconds and the whole thing, and like, the kids can do it. So if my 3-year-old can do it, anyone can do it. So that's sort of in our routine whenever we go out or inside the house or after using the bathroom, all that stuff. But the thing that's hard for me is not touching my face.
I know.
I realize it like so much. I'm like, don't touch it.
And
It's so
I
hard.
like rubbing your eyes. I mean, I have glasses, which I don't always wear all the time, but I've been wearing them all the time because it makes me think when I go to rub my eye, I have an obstacle, and then I have to think like, oh, don't do that. Don't touch
Yeah.
your face. Like leave, don't, get a Q-tip or something and rub your eye with a Q-tip, but don't stick your finger in your eye. And, yeah. So
Yeah. When I was in New York, I wore my glasses for that reason. I just thought I had brought my contacts, but I was like, do I want to be sticking my finger in my eye right now? When I'm traveling? Probably not.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean, glasses are, hey, we can look more studious. That's what they say. So if it helps my image and I can keep from touching my eye, then it's a double win-win, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm telling people to do too is like to just love on their current clients, like love on the people around you. Like that's what we're doing now, right? It's just this is a good opportunity. People are home. It's a good opportunity for them to learn and for you to slow down and just say, "Hey, what can I do for you? Would it be helpful for me to do something for you at this point?" So that's the one of the things that I'm doing. But
It's funny. I just said that to somebody this morning. Like since I've been home, because I've been home for 3 days now, because my daughter was sick and it was a pretty bad cold. So I stayed home too because I was catching it and I wasn't sure what it was. So I said, you know what, I'm not going to go give that to anybody else. So I've been home for 3 days, and I was saying there's a more personal aspect to being a business person comes out when you're at home. And I last night was sitting here watching mindless TV, and I was going through my LinkedIn, and I was literally reaching out to every single one of my contacts to say hi, because there are so many of them that I don't talk to on a daily basis. And I was like, these are people I know. So while I'm sitting here, why don't I just open a conversation and say hello? And talk to my existing clients on a more personal, like, hey, what's going on? What can I help you with kind of level? And I think that you're right. Like that home environment stimulates that kind of behavior, and it's great.
great. Great. And what are you doing specifically? I know we talked a little bit too about what you're doing for clients with this whole, some things that they'll need that they should be thinking about during the coronavirus and everybody working remotely. So I'm doing this business unusual because I think I learned a lot from you in our conversation. I wanted to share that with other clients and let people know that business doesn't have to stop, even though it looks a little different right now. So what are the things that you're doing for your clients?
Well, there are a couple of things. The first and most obvious is that every point in your sales process has to be digital now. So whatever materials you have that you use when you're at an in-person meeting, if they're not already converted to a digital version, they should be. And sometimes it needs to be more than just a PDF of something if you really want it to have impact. So if you have a really great brochure or something, a pitch book that you use and you walk through with clients when you're there, if you're not going to be there, it might be nice to turn that into a digital experience where there's some interactivity. And at the very least, turn it into a PDF or something that people can receive digitally. So it's really thinking about from the minute you meet a prospect to the minute that they become a client, and even once they are a client, how can you make that whole marketing and sales experience digital so that you don't have to rely on meetings to get a client, to turn a prospect into a client. And then there's this sustainable angle, which we love to plug because we love trees and we want more of them to be alive on the planet. And that's just thinking about paper. So I don't mean to offend any printers in the room, because printing still has its place, but so many marketing materials get thrown away every year, boxes and boxes and boxes of brochures that either they printed too many, or they've become outdated, or we have a new product that needs to be added. So when you do things digitally, that never happens, because digital things can be changed in a day and re-uploaded, and they're still there, and nothing gets thrown out. And so we do these audits with our clients now, where we have clients who are interested in having a larger sustainable footprint. They come in and they dump a box of marketing materials on the table, and we kind of look through them and say, could this brochure and this brochure be combined? Or which of these brochures do we no longer use or need? Or is there a better marketing tool that could be used for any of these products and services than what we have already? And sometimes it's turning printed things digital. Sometimes it's printing less of them and having some of the distribution be digital. Sometimes if you're still going to print, it could be, well, if we make this just a little bit smaller, it would fit differently on a sheet, and you might get an extra 2 brochures on a sheet. So you're saving paper that way. There are just a lot of ways to be conscious about marketing and really try to understand how to maximize the impact of pieces without harming the environment more than needed. So it serves 2 purposes. In this day and age, being digital is great because it doesn't impact you when things like this happen. But also, just from a sustainable standpoint, why do we need to be throwing things away? There's also print on demand now. So if you have the same kinds of materials over and over again, and a lot of salespeople are accessing them, we can create a portal. You can put all your pieces on a portal. People can either pick them or adjust them or tailor them, and then just print the amount that they need from the portal to a print-on-demand shop. They can be personalized and everything, and so there's really no waste at all because you're only printing what you need as you need it using digital printing. So there are a lot of things to do to
Yeah.
help businesses both be more sustainable and also just be prepared for interruption.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this was great. I think we can wrap it up now, but I just want to thank you. Thanks, Darcy, for joining us to tell us how you're doing business unusual.
Thank you, Liz, for having me. It's a great idea for a series. I'm happy to be a part of it.